Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonja Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds, the National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds, and boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info, the Bet Us Opportunities webpage, for a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. Must be 21 years old, and remember, bet responsibly.
Good morning and welcome to the Mac and Jack Show. I am your interim host, Sonja, sitting in for Mac. Good morning, Jack. How are you today?
Hey, good morning, Sonja. You know, we like your shirt on Duke. You know, you're loyal to the very end. That's a good fan.
Thank you. Loyal to the very end. And of course, Duke, of course, not the winners, but I'm still a fan, like you said. And good morning to all of you. Download the Roku app so that you too can be in the know. We have sports 24 hours a day. Rate us on Roku, National Streaming Sports. Thank you for over 12,615 of you who have already liked and followed our channel. We really appreciate you. At Mac, we hope you continue to rest up. And shout out to you and Miss Linda over there. Lots to squeeze in this 1 hour. Of course, like you said, Jack, Duke didn't win it, but a very tough game for Houston. The Houston Cougars get clawed out in the end. They actually kept the lead for the majority of the game, and they beat a stat because 93% of the finalists, I should say, that had a 12-point lead or more, the majority of the game with 14 or less minutes left in the game has won the game. However, the Florida Gators came back within the last 1 minute, 38 seconds to win that game against Kelvin Sampson. So Kelvin Sampson making a first initial appearance, the Houston Cougars making an initial appearance in the championship game for the first time in school history, but they walk away without a champ. Of course, the Florida Gators, this is their third one. This is their first one since 2007. And so they are the one of the only teams that now have a collegiate title for both football and basketball. Congratulations to the Florida Gators.
Yeah, you know, once on the debate show, we discussed the question, if you're a team in a championship game, would you rather lose the game decisively or lose in heartbreaking close fashion? And we went back and forth, and the feeling was by a couple of people on the panel, yeah, I'd rather play close and nail bite. At least I know I'm in it the whole way. I think if you lose the way Houston did, you never get over it. You never get over it, as opposed to, let's say, Houston had lost by 12, 14 points. They'd be highly disappointed, thinking we could have played better. But the missed opportunity, Houston's never won a national championship. They were leading practically all game. And Sonja, I don't have to tell you, you well know, in sports, it's about closing out a game. How many times have we seen one team leading the whole way practically, and it looks like they're going to win the game for sure, and they can't finish it off? And we forget about that. You like to tease me about my New York Jets. My New York Jets couldn't close games out last year. So many games that looked like they were going to win, they lost. And then at the end of the day, it's what Bill Parcells would say, you are what your record is. And Houston, what happened to them at the end of the game? Their last 3 possessions, they couldn't even get a shot off. They couldn't even get a shot off. I mean, it's like they forgot how to execute at the end. I don't want to say they choked, okay? They couldn't execute. They couldn't execute. And Florida, in a sense, beat Houston at their own game. We kept hearing about Houston smothering defense, the way they would bottle up another team, which they've done throughout the tournament, throughout the season. But it was Florida's defense at the end of the game that Houston couldn't cope with. And you'd see the Houston players, rather than looking to move the ball around and create an open shot, they kept trying to take the ball to the basket by force. I mean, it was like five slammer jammer, their attitude, revisited. And it just, to see it unravel for Houston at the end. And I'm going to tell you, going into the game, Sonja, I don't really care much who won. I just wanted to see a good game. But as the game was going on, I was kind of rooting for Houston because they were the better team. They were outplaying Florida. And I hated to see them let the game get away the way it was. Certain programs, are going to be back in the mix in the Final Four to play national championship, like your Duke team. We know they're coming back. I mean, in the next 2-3 seasons, if not next year, of course, probably next year, they're going to be in the mix. But certain other programs like Houston, they haven't been to a Final Four, since the 1980s. I mean, they haven't been, to a finals since the days of Olajuwon when they went back to finals. And to get there this year, who knows when Houston's ever going to get back? And a loss like this, it haunts you. It haunts you in the sense, even if somehow you come back next year and you win it all, you think, wow, we could have done something back to back. We could have been historic. But for Houston, it's a missed opportunity that's going to hurt really badly. They're not going to be talking around campus, well, we went to the championship game.
Right.
It's going to be very painful to discuss this season, what went down in the NCAA tournament, this massive missed opportunity for the Houston Cougars.
Yeah, and as a Duke fan, I'm partial. I'm always believing in karma. You talked about the fact that, Houston just could not score. If you remember when they played Duke, Duke could not inbound that ball. It was 2 times, 2 last possessions that Duke had. They could not inbound it at all into the field of play, court of play for them. They couldn't even get it to the free throw line. They couldn't get it anywhere. They couldn't make the free throws. It was just a mess. And we literally saw Houston. I equate this, Jack, with the Cowboys game when Dak Prescott could not seem to get the ball set in time to take that down. I think they were playing the Lions or the Chiefs, whoever they were playing.
Well, that was when time ran out, but that's different. That was one play. But you're right. But I see a point with Duke too. Teams sometimes unravel at the end of the game, and sometimes you want one player to step up,
right?
Stop the bleeding. Get the team regrouped. Coaches can call timeouts, and try to calm their team down. But, you get a sense sometimes a team has a 12-point lead or something like that. They're confident they're going to win. They're dominating the game for the most part. And then the lead starts shrinking little by little, and then doubt sets in. That's what kind of happened with Duke. But and then of course at the end of the game, maybe you could still salvage that game if Cooper Flag hits the shot at the end. But that's your iconic play, and he even misses the shot at the end, and they wind up.
It was horrible.
I mean, the same thing at the Duke campus, the Houston campus. Sometimes it's the manner and how you lose. It's not just Sonja, loss is a loss. It's kind of how you lose. If you feel you're playing well, the other team's playing well, and you lose, it's highly disappointing still. But you ask yourself, did we beat ourselves in a sense?
Right.
But Duke and Houston are going to have to ask themselves.
Yeah, Houston was banking on Sharp and Cryer a lot for their big plays and everything, and those guys just fell through. I mean, Cryer had only 6 rebounds. He played 37 minutes, and he did get 19 points. But as for Sharp, he only had 8 points and only 3 rebounds and played 29 minutes of the game. The big player came up was Roberts, who had 8 rebounds, played 35 minutes, 0 assists, but 8 points. So Cryer did put up the majority of points, just was not enough at all. Of course, the end of the game, it all went left. As in fact, Emmanuel Sharp was the one that had that major turnover. And of course, Clayton Jr. came in from the Florida team to assure that play was not made. Very close game, 65-63. And we talked about a little bit before we started live here. Would you rather, or if you had a choice of losing, would you accept, being blown out? Or or those close games, would you at least say, hey, we put up a good fight. I feel better because we put up a good fight?
Yeah, if I'm Houston, I hate the manner and I lost. I would rather have lost by 15 points.
Yeah.
And then I would still be very disappointed. And I'd say we're a much better team than we showed. We just played a terrible game. I would rather lose just having a terrible shooting game. The ball not falling in the basket. And it's that simple. If you lose because you're shooting very poorly and the ball's just not falling, and okay, look, the biggest upset in college basketball history was Villanova beating Georgetown.
Yes.
In the 85. Okay, biggest upset in college basketball history. They beat them by 2 points. Villanova shot 79%. 79%. Now Georgetown had the better team. They beat Villanova in their only 2 regular season games before meeting, in the NCAA finals. But when a team shoots 79%, you could shrug your shoulders and say that's an aberration. They would never do that normally. The ball just happened to be falling in. I mean, you could beat anyone when you're making 4 out of 5 shots from the field. You basically are probably going to beat anyone.
Yeah,
definitely. It's more than just execution, more than, desired defense. I mean, but what a heartbreaking loss for Houston. But my thing is this. The last few possessions, not to be able to get off a shot. I can understand if they missed some baskets. They had a couple of wide open looks and the ball didn't fall in. That would be highly disappointing. Don't get me wrong. But they didn't even give themselves a chance at the end. I mean, at the last possession, they went for a 3-pointer, didn't get the shot off. And it's a loss you don't get over. It's a loss that's so hard to get over. It's easy to say, well, we'll learn from this. We'll come back next year. But you have to move forward. You can't dwell on it. I understand that, but it's what is. You're getting a little Duke hate here. I didn't read that.
Yeah, you see it. Was Sean
Duke
actually
hate or what?
Yes, so good morning to you, Sean. Actually, Sean is very respectful. I gotta give it to him because he actually said his Tar Heels need a lot of help, and he said he thinks the 7-foot transfer will help. But then he actually said he can't even hate on Duke. He said, Flag is legit. Cooper Flag, of course. He said he think he's going pro, and then he said, let me rephrase that. He hope he goes pro. Of course, Cooper Flag is only 18 years old. So that's the thing that gets me. People have hated on him, and he's a kid still. He's got a lot of time left that he could go either way. But let's put a plug in that, Jack.
Cooper Flag, I saw something. He has a GPA 4.0. He's an off the books student. I mean, he can get a job, whatever. You know, when you talk about Cooper Flag, I mean, when you're that intelligent or whatever to get a GPA like that, he could go to medical school. He could do this. He could do that. He's making his college money. He doesn't necessarily have to come out. I know that saying, well, if he doesn't come out, he might not be a number 1 overall draft pick. So what?
Right.
If he's a good NBA player, he gets his money later on anyway. And if he gets injured and can never play again, the amount of money he's making in college combined with his 4.0 GPA, meaning he can get a knockout job in society, he's going to be very comfortable. He can pick and choose.
Yeah,
you know, and he can't. But with the NBA, you don't know what team you're going to go to for sure. Listen, if Cooper Flag was an NFL player and he was a consensus number 1 pick, he could decide, do I want to play for the Tennessee Titans or stay in college an extra year? Peyton Manning did that. He elected not to play for the Jets, to stay in college an extra year. It was his father who pushed him to make that decision not to play for Bill Parcells and the Jets because they figured Peyton would be too sensitive for the New York market.
Yeah.
But Cooper Flag doesn't know what team could get him in the lottery. Cooper Flag would be perfect, Sonja. I mean, absolutely perfect as a Brooklyn Net. To be in that market, like the Barclays Center. Oh, he would big there. He would turn the franchise upside down. The net, it's a Knick town, New York, Sonja. But if Cooper Flag went to the Nets, the Knicks would have some serious competition from the Nets for the first time.
That'd be great. And it's so weird because I've seen Brooklyn, the Nets. I've seen Barclays Stadium in person. In fact, my grandfather lived right around the corner, like literally walking distance from the stadium. And so I'm, partial to them, but it is a Knicks city, and that really could really rough up the revenue. Could get the team, rejuvenated a little bit. We could see a run from them maybe like we did a couple seasons ago, maybe in the 2021 season when they legit were contenders. We could see them revamp that. I mean, it's 4 years later. Who wouldn't go? But I'm going to say this, Jack, and I want to pivot back for a second about these stats for the Florida-Houston game. So, Sean, thank you so much for the comment and for bringing that up. Right now, it looks like if Cooper goes in, he would go to the Wizards or he would go to the Hornets. Or he would go to, I think, the Magic. And none of those teams look that attractive right now.
Well, the Magic, the idea of living in the Orlando area might appeal to him. Nothing against Washington, D.C. If Washington has a winning team, that's good. But to go to the Washington Wizards, they have they have a lousy team there. Would he make them better? Cooper Flag will make anyone better, but he could only improve the Wizards to a point. I don't know would it be the most appealing franchise for him to play for. It's what it is. I mean, Brooklyn would be great. Orlando, I think. Orlando has some good young players. They're not bad. Don't get me wrong.
Orlando doesn't really have
this year, but they're not bad. They have some upside. Mm-hmm. But Charlotte, well, listen, he's North Carolina. Okay,
he's home.
You're right. I mean, the location itself might be extremely appealing to him. I would think it would be. But somehow he declares for the NBA draft, winds up as a Washington Wizard. I mean, what's he going to look at their roster and say, oh, I get to play with Jordan Poole? Okay.
The Wizards are making no magic, no pun intended. Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things. I mean, right before the playoffs, he was quoted as saying, he wanted to come back. But now that this has happened, he's probably going to mull it over a little bit. We'll hear from him soon. The draft is coming up real quick.
Well, he can't come back to Duke. It depends how much you love the college life, too.
Right.
You got to consider certain factors. In the past, players, a lot of them would come from poverty. And, entering the NBA draft, getting their money gave them, a chance really to help their family and so on. And I'm not sure what Cooper Flagg's situation is, his family situation and all, but just the money he's getting in college.
Yeah, he's already getting
different now.
A lot of NIL deals.
I mean, we were looking at something like Arch Manning, the amount of money he's getting to quarterback Texas. I mean, he's getting more money staying in college than he would get on his rookie deal in the NFL. So now Arch Manning, after this year, he might want to stay in Texas one additional year because reportedly he loves the college life there. He likes it. He likes being in school. You're playing in front of packed, enthusiastic stadiums in college, just like college basketball players are playing in a more enthusiastic environment. You know, listen, playing in a home game at Duke would be a heck of a lot more exciting than playing a home game for the Wizards, even, you know, Charlotte or whoever else.
I mean, and let's not forget he's only 18. He literally just got to college. So if he's one of these people, I'm in the mindset of this. Okay, so you know they didn't always have the NIL deals for college kids. So the old me would be like, you know, go to college, at least get your degree. So if you, God forbid, you get injured, you have something to fall back on. If you haven't, you know, wrapped up your degree, or at least some, you know, a lot of athletes go back to school later and finish it. They go ahead and declare for the draft, you know, football or basketball, and still they just go back later online or what have you and just get it in their own time. And I guess it's all the same in the end. But I just feel like he's still very young. He does have friends there. You made a good point, you know, playing for an enthusiastic, fun team, you know, as opposed to going into the league where everybody's an adult, everybody's been there for a long time. Everybody can get, you know, really testy when they're not winning. It's just not a real good, conducive environment. He'd have to grow up real fast. I mean, it happens,
Yeah.
but
Like, Sonja, imagine this. He wanted to milk out all his college eligibility. I don't know how many more years he could stay at Duke if he wanted to, but he might, you know, let's say he thought to himself, hey, I get millions a year. Why not just, I love it here in college, milk it out. You know, Matt Leinart, the former quarterback, I remember when he was at USC, he took a ping pong course just to be able to stay at school. Could you imagine? And Matt Leinart, I mean, and Cooper Flagg might be into getting his college degree. Look, I want to get my degree.
And it's grad.
And
they had a graduate player on the team as well.
And can you imagine Cooper Flagg gives you 5 more years at Duke? I don't know what he would be allowed. Can you imagine how much better he would be 3 years from now than the other players coming in? Let's say Cooper Flagg continues to improve. That could be the equivalent of, imagine when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were young players tearing up the NBA. Could you imagine they still stayed at college and they did that to the college kids?
Everybody would probably love that.
They would change the college eligibility rules if that ever happened for real. They would see Cooper Flagg averaging 50 points a game or whatever. I'm exaggerating a little.
No, but I get you.
Yeah.
And they would be like, we gotta ring this in, you know, kind of like the NIL deals. At some point, you got to put a cap on them because now it's an out of control thing. I wanted to talk to you real quick about, you brought up the stats about how Villanova, there was a 79% shooting range. And I was looking at the stats when you said that, Jack. When I look at Florida and Houston, they are within a point of each other in every single stat. Every single stat. Their field goals, 21 for 53 for Florida, 24 for 69, just a little bit more. But their percentage goals, 39 and 34%. 3-pointers, 6 out of 24 for Florida, 6 out of 25 for Houston, and so on and so forth. I don't know if this is a situation where, did you hear about, because you brought up Michael Jordan and Larry Bird as a small, just reckless. And I wanted to know, because I want to go back in that time era, did you hear about the fact that some of security, and, you know, I always talk about karma and stuff, some of security actually prohibited Olajuwon from going on the court to be with Houston. And, you know, who doesn't let Hakeem Olajuwon on the court with them?
And I think I'm hearing things, Sonia. I could have sworn I think I anticipated. Did you say Social Security? I was thinking, and then you mentioned Elijah Wan, and I'm thinking, is he trying to collect his benefits? No, I don't. Listen, I don't blame security. You know, these guys who work security aren't paid a great amount of money. A lot of them are moonlighting a side job. They're trying to keep order. A lot of times they don't know who the player is for sure. They have certain parameters. You know what happened in New York once, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Ewing, I guess he didn't have his idea that the security guard didn't know who he was. So Patrick Ewing wasn't allowed to go in. So now some of these security guards, they're not aware. They're not big
That's
basketball
crazy.
fans. No, it's not crazy. They're not big basketball fans. So they stopped Patrick Ewing. They didn't know who he was. So the next day, one of the writers, a very good writer and a good guy, George Willis, who's black, and I know George, good man, he tried to make it into a racial thing. The guards didn't know who the heck Patrick Ewing was. Okay? It happened with Joe DiMaggio at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, it did.
There was no bigger sports icon when he was alive than Joe DiMaggio. Yet Joe DiMaggio went something to pick up tickets that he thought should have been left from, and they said, no, nothing's left for you. And they basically, in the case closed, they, didn't come in. So DiMaggio was insulted, this and that. Things happen. Look, someone should have noticed from the Houston sideline, maybe one of the coaches or whatever. Elijah Wan's okay, but in reality, Elijah Wan's not part of that team. I mean, he's part of the culture of Slammer.
Yeah, but Jack, Kelvin Sampson had ensured that he was right there. Like, this is the thing. Olajuwon didn't just show up at the game and say, hey, I'm Hakeem Olajuwon, let me go on the court. The news and everybody's talking about this. Kelvin Sampson made sure him and Jim Nance, one of the CBS broadcasters, were both included on the sideline as famous alumni of Houston. And the fact that even though people are saying they don't know who he was, security didn't know who he was, this was after the Duke game. He was turned away. Everybody's talking about it because they're like, listen, he was courtside. He was seen interacting with Kelvin Sampson. It wasn't that much security on there, but you're right, Jack. If Kelvin brought him in there, he should have made sure he had his media credentials, and he did not.
Exactly. Why would security want to keep Olajuwon away intentionally? They're doing their job. If there was a breakdown in communication, is it security's fault? Mm-hmm. I mean, come on. Don't put the blame on the little guys with security. Someone could have been there representing Houston, who had the relationship with security and ushered those guys, Olajuwon and Nance on the court. Did Nance get to go on the court or what?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say yes, but
regardless with Olajuwon, chances are security wasn't fully aware of who he was. And even if they were, it doesn't mean he should necessarily be allowed to run onto the court. You look. They would have allowed him. They would have allowed him on had they known, the situation security better. I'm tired of security getting picked on. They have a hard job.
So let me flip the coin then. Even though I'm a Duke fan, Coach K was at this game. And say Duke wins, which we really should have. We were cheated. And Coach K wants to go out on the court. Security is not stopping Coach K.
If security doesn't know who Coach K is, they are stopping him. If they don't recognize him, they are stopping him.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
You're assuming security knew who Olajuwon was. They know his background. Chances are security maybe never even heard of Phi Slammer Jammer. They didn't realize the type of icon that Olajuwon was. It doesn't mean that they're fans once again. They're just doing a job over there. If I was working security and I see Elijah on there and he wants to go on the court, yeah, I'd let him slip by me because I know he's safe, he's part of it, so on. But then again, if you're given orders, only certain people with passes allowed on and he doesn't have the pass, it becomes, a little sticky because rules are rules.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, rules are rules. And so even if they did know who he was, if he didn't have the right credentials, unfortunately, yeah, but some people may lose their jobs over this. The fanfare that's going on right now?
The fans are idiots, basically. I hate saying it. Not all of them, not our listeners, of course, others, but they go off on social media. They're going to make it into a racial thing and this and that. I don't have time for the silliness. People do their job in security, and that's that. Give security the respect, that they usually deserve. Usually, right. Not always. Usually.
Speaking of respect, let's shift gears. So congratulations again to the Gators. Thanks for gobbling up Houston. So sorry, Kelvin Sampson, of course, being from Robinson County, North Carolina, which is where I'm from, and he graduated from my alum, University of North Carolina, Pembroke. But better luck next year. Looks like no respect was given in Denver. Denver is a projected team to look great in the West. However, Denver has cleaned house. Mike Malone goes off at a press conference about his players not reading the books and playing like SHIT. And now Denver's like, you know what? We're cleaning house. They get rid of him. And so, Jack, this is a bad time to have fired a coach and clean house. Denver looks solid for the playoffs.
Well, no, they weren't looking solid. They lost 4 in a row, so they were playing poorly. But Denver obviously would be a threat come playoff time, knowing their pedigree. But the way they had been playing was really bad. We cannot have comments coming on when we're done with the discussion. Even though they're good comments.
Yeah.
We're on the NBA right now. Firing Mark Malone, I wonder whether they ran this by Jokic. Because if they didn't run it by Jokic, there could be a problem. Jokic is going to be eligible in the summer to sign a 3-year max suspension at $212 million. That's over $70 million a year. That's big, serious money. Now, if Jokic doesn't sign that extension, that means he has 1 foot out the door with Denver. He doesn't want to be there because it's no longer a money issue that they can bring up, because the money would be, it's mind-boggling, over $70 million a year right now to turn that down for 3 years. You get it. So far, I haven't heard Jokic say anything. Jokic is, and Malone has been Jokic's only coach since he's been in the NBA. And Malone was a coach at Denver for 10 years. So you kind of wonder what Jokic is thinking. Of course, Jokic isn't going to say, it's a good move, we had to do something. But if Jokic soft soaps it by saying, you never like to see a guy get fired, it's unfortunate. Really grateful for all Mark Malone has done for me over the years. That means he was okay with the firing. Not that he necessarily wanted to see it, but it meant that he didn't want to see it. If Jokic is outraged, then this is a dumb move. Why are we doing this? It makes no sense. That means he's really upset about it. That means Denver didn't run it by him.
And they got rid of Calvin Booth. They didn't just get rid of Malone.
Their GM also, yeah.
So, I guess for now, basically, the vice president, Josh Croix, came out, did this whole press conference about why they did what they did or what have you. I don't know. They're not extending the general manager. It looks like David Edelman is going to be the assumed head coach for the remainder of the season.
One of stats, Sonja, the last 6 NBA championship coaches, last 6, 4 of them have been fired.
Oh my goodness!
So it shows. So why would you want to go to certain franchises unless you're desperate for a job. But if you can pick and choose, why would you want to go to a job? Like when Dan Hurley went to interview for the Laker job before the college season began, and he thought about taking it. I'm saying, Dan, why are you going to interview over there? Frank Vogel won an NBA championship with the Lakers, yet he gets let go a couple of years later. Why? I mean, those aren't appealing jobs.
Yeah, it's and guess what, Jack? The way the news is coming out, according to CBS Sports just a few minutes ago, literally, I was just looking. This came out about, let's see what time, 7 something this morning. Looks like Mike Budenholzer for the Suns is on the chopping block, and they're saying if he gets fired, he's going to be the third coach in as many seasons with the Suns. Because the Suns have just been such a big disappointment this season, given the fact that they had Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal.
Yeah, and Budenholzer, he's an NBA championship winning coach not long ago. Okay? He gets let go. Nick Nurse let's get
Yes.
Frank Vogel, Mark Malone. So you win a championship, and a year and a half later, you're no longer, a good enough coach to stay with the team. I mean, and we see so much. Someone gets voted as coach of the year, and then a year or two later, they're let go. Years ago, I remember, I forgot who the coach was. He was coach of the year. And a number of coaches of the year were let go. No, I meant he was in the running, one of the coaches for coach of the year. And I asked him, do you think you're going to win coach of the year? And he says, do I really want to? Because he made reference to all the coaches that he hired. And why put a coach on the hot seat? But the ironic part is this, Sonja. One franchise fires a coach because he's not good enough to coach for them, and then the other franchises are all over him. Mark Malone's going to get a job as a head coach pretty easily. Pretty easily.
You're talking about when the Kings gave Mike Brown their coach of the year, and he got fired like right after that.
Well, not right. Yeah. Well, Mike Brown, good coach. Mike Brown was coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron didn't like him.
Yeah.
So what happened when LeBron people forget this, when LeBron became a free agent, okay? And the first time around, right before he went to Miami, Cleveland was hoping he'd come back. So they fired Mike Brown. So LeBron could see, well, he doesn't have to play for Mike Brown. He could have a coach of his choosing and so on. And you want to know why? I know it has LeBron's fingerprints all over it, Sonja.
He's a coach killer.
Let me tell you the evidence to me. LeBron goes to Miami. After that, Cleveland rehires Mike Brown to coach.
That was crazy. Yeah, that was crazy.
Right? Because LeBron's no longer going to be a Cavalier, and they liked Mike Brown, so that's why they ousted. And also, what's his name? The Cleveland Blatt. Okay, when he coached that Cleveland, he had a record of 30 wins and 11 losses. 30 and 11. And they move on from him because LeBron didn't like him. LeBron supposedly Eric Spoelstra at Miami.
Yes.
Reportedly, LeBron didn't like him. And reportedly, this is the story, Pat Riley said, he's going to be here as my coach after you. He's going to be here longer than you are. Because Pat Riley really loved Eric Spoelstra. I don't know what their relationship is now. It might be great still. I have no clue. But that's the guy who was Pat Riley's protege, And now with the Lakers, Frank Vogel's let go. Had LeBron advocated for Frank Vogel, gone to the front office, he'd still be the coach. But LeBron's got his guy in J.J. Redick, his buddy. Van Redick is doing a good job at the Lakers. I got to give him his due. I think he's doing a good job there. He's got a good staff of experienced assistant coaches. So no criticism of J.J. Redick. I know he could be a big blowhard, but he's doing the job, the right way, in L.A. there. Kudos.
LeBron has been kind of dubbed the coach killer for many years, almost a decade. I mean, you brought up a few of these people. Of course, he's going to personally deny having anything to do with this, Jack. But David Blah, Eric Spoelstra, Mike Brown, Tyronn Lue, like all of these people, he has had some hand in getting them out of their positions. And it's worth noting that some of the coaches who've worked with LeBron have literally, like you said, gone on to more successful careers like Eric Spoelstra. But LeBron is a coach killer. He has like, it's kind of like, and I hate to even bring him up, but it's just the truth. Aaron Rodgers, as far as coaches, look how Aaron Rodgers did Mike McCarthy in Green Bay. Then he gets to the Jets. He does the same thing with Salah, Robert Salah, and you're just like, are you kidding me? We have players that have these super big type A personalities that they just don't want to work with a certain person, or they feel like that person is not conducive for the franchise as a whole, in their opinion, even though they have only been there, say 5 years or less. It's enough for them to come in and say, this coach is not the proper fit. And good morning to you, Brent. Thank you so much.
I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is a coach killer. I think that's a little extreme. Mike McCarthy was Aaron Rodgers' coach for a good amount of years. Their relationship was, so-so, because Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. He wanted things done completely his way on offense. Okay, that was his thing. And the coaches want an input on how things, should be run on offense. I mean, more than an input. They want to run a certain way. So you get certain friction. Look, if you have a superstar player, he can create friction if they don't buy in completely. Like you take Josh Allen at Buffalo, for example. If he wants the offense run a certain way and the offensive coordinator, Brady, wants it run his way, there could be some serious friction there. Would that make Josh Allen a coach killer necessarily?
Maybe one time.
And the thing with Robert Salah, Aaron Rodgers didn't get Salah fired because Aaron Rodgers and Salah reportedly have had a good relationship. There's no vibes that came from the Jet locker room that Rodgers and the coaches were like, there was this turmoil. He wanted Hackett to be his coach. It didn't work out with Aaron Rodgers. That's the thing. They thought it could work out. They accommodated him like he was a superstar. Look, like the Lakers would accommodate LeBron. I mean, they got his son, Bronny James, on the team. I mean, why did they do that? To accommodate LeBron. When you get a superstar player, you try to accommodate him. I mean, the Chicago Bulls, when Jordan was there, their GM over there, Jerry Krause, he hated Phil Jackson's guts. He wanted to move on from Phil Jackson. He couldn't because of Michael Jordan. Because Michael Jordan advocated for Phil Jackson. And Jordan was such a superstar, you couldn't ruffle his feathers.
I mean, I get what you're saying on that, Jack. I mean, like Brent says, Mike McCarthy knew how to massage his diva quarterback's ego.
Yeah.
And so once he wasn't giving him what he wanted with that ego, and that, let's be clear, they did bring in Matt LaFleur, who did change the offense for Green Bay. It was reunited, but then they move on from Aaron Rodgers.
And Aaron Rodgers won 2 MVP awards with LaFleur as his coach. Was necessarily a terrible move. I mean, they got to the point where, the Packers, they underachieved with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback. They won 1 Super Bowl with him. They never got back to another Super Bowl. And there was discontent. We see the same thing happening at Dallas with Mike McCarthy now. If Mike McCarthy's no longer, I don't mean now, before Mike McCarthy's no longer the coach, I'm not going to say Dak Prescott got him fired there. I mean, I'm not saying, Jerry Jones was interfering with Mike McCarthy. That's a narrative people like to put out there. But it's hard. Only one team wins a championship, Sonja.
Yeah, that's true. But if they're coming in, Yeah, but if they're coming in and there's nothing wrong with the wins and losses, Mike McCarthy did get the Cowboys as we switched over to NFL. Clearly, they did get them the 12-5, 3 consecutive seasons in a row. This last season is really not to blame. Their main quarterback is out with a hamstring injury that resulted in surgery. They bring in Trey Lance, who's not really the answer for them. In fact, they kind of don't even let him do the last of his snaps and kind of cheat him out with. So congratulations to Trey for going over to the Chargers now. I don't know. Now they promoted Schoppenheimer from an offensive coordinator position to the head coach. It's just going to be a repeat in Dallas of what we've already seen.
Well, if you want to blame Jerry Jones, you can, but blame him for the right thing, the wrong things he did.
Mm-hmm.
As far as overseeing the roster, he's the GM. Don't blame Jerry Jones for meddling. And when you think of it, if someone's a GM, how much can they meddle? They're
we saw it with David Tepper with the Panthers. They do meddle, Jack.
But David Tepper's not the GM. Okay,
well, owner,
David Tepper overrules his players on the draft. Okay. Let's say this season, Carolina's going number 8 overall in the draft. And when Shedeur Sanders is there at number 8, the Panthers don't need a quarterback. They got Bryce Young. But can you imagine if David Tepper's in love with Shedeur Sanders? He thinks he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he overrules his people and tells them they got to take Shedeur Sanders. And the Panthers draft Shedeur Sanders because of David Tepper. That would be meddling of the worst kind.
Well, that's what happened when Bryce got drafted because everybody else wanted C.J. Stroud. He came in and picked Bryce, and then he fired everybody that basically banked on C.J. because they weren't the people that he wanted in that position. So, yeah, that's
terrible when you overrule your people. I thought the Panthers should have taken C.J. Stroud too, even though I felt then and I feel now Bryce Young is going to be a good quarterback. I thought it was just a situation of C.J. Stroud was a little better. That's all it was. It wasn't any feeling that Bryce Young wasn't going to make it. And there was all this talk that Bryce Young was too small. He couldn't withstand the hits of the NFL. Listen, people, quarterbacks are protected by today's rules.
Absolutely.
They're not going to pile on the guy. They're not going to drive him down on the turf and, to try to hurt him.
In fact, now he's scrambling because he's smaller, so he's able to scramble under the pocket.
yeah, but whatever there. But that's with that. But I don't mean to get on the Jerry Jones hate thing, the detour to Aaron Rodgers, but some of these narratives are kind of false in a way. The way they're created. Aaron Rodgers didn't work out with the Jets. Because in large part, he was injured the first year. The second year, they didn't finish games. He handed the defense over leads at times, and the defense was disappointing, didn't hold it. Other times, Aaron Rodgers couldn't finish plays, didn't play well himself, okay? And he brought in his own people, Alan Lazard, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, etc. And those moves didn't turn things around. It's so the Aaron Rodgers experiment didn't work with the Jets. I supported Aaron Glenn's decision to move on from Aaron Rodgers, create a new culture. But but this musical chairs, we talked about coaches, it happens with players. Now, wait a second, Sonja. Justin Fields isn't good enough to be the Steelers starting quarterback, but Aaron Rodgers is, according to Mike Tomlin. He wants Aaron Rodgers to be a starter, but he doesn't want Justin Fields to be a starter. Yet the Jets want Justin Fields as their starter, and they want to move on from Aaron Rodgers. It's musical chairs.
It's so confusing.
Coaches and players.
I'm going to tell you, this is my opinion about that, because the Steelers have looked legitimate confusing since they brought in Fields and Wilson together. That was the beginning of a confusion to me with that franchise. I think that any team that gets Aaron Rodgers at this point, whoever it is just trying to basically prove a point. Is he still the same Aaron Rodgers, or is it time for you to hang up the cleats? Because he has now Like, he didn't even stay with the Jets long, period. He didn't stay with y'all long at all. He was clearly not the franchise quarterback. And even though you said, he didn't get Robert Salah fired, he's gone right after him. So
The Jets were 2-3 when Salah was let go. You know what? When Salah got fired, people don't get it. They lost the game in England against the Minnesota Vikings. Woody Johnson, the Jet owner, was the ambassador for the United States for the UK.
yep.
And the Jets lost in front of Woody Johnson's friends in England. That was something Woody Johnson couldn't tolerate.
That's horrible.
But the Jets got worse after letting Robert Salah go. They didn't get. I mean, they lost a bunch of close games.
Right.
It didn't work out. It's done. It's new.
So they
era.
shouldn't have let him go, is what I'm saying. It was a bad mistake to let him go.
I'm against Sonja firing coaches during the season unless it's extenuating circumstances. Let them play it out during the year. Sometimes it works out. You fire a coach, your team could go on to win the championship. It happens. I mean, it happened. I mentioned the Cavaliers before, moving on from David Blatt when he was 30-11. They hired Tyronn Lue and they won the NBA championship. They came down from 3-1 against the Warriors in the finals to win it. I mean, so it does happen once in a while, but for the most part, all these coaching changes, let the coach/manager finish the year out. And then, if you want to move on from him, you kind of do it. But sometimes you have a case of a GM and an owner, they really don't like their coach anymore, and they look at an opportunity to move on from him in a way they don't want him to win it all. Look, the Yankees fired Joe Girardi the year Joe Girardi came one game away from going to the World Series. One game away. Now, they fired him at the end of the season, but had Girardi won one more game and went to the World Series, the Yankees may have been in a position where they couldn't fire him. And imagine he won the World Series. Now they got to give him a multi-year contract at a nice raise.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't do it, they'll look really bad in front of their fan base. So sometimes you have an opportunity to fire a guy, move on from him. Owners will take that opportunity. Your owner, Carolina, David Tepper, he was quiet after early in the year. He kind of did tone it down, right?
He finally did it. Good morning to all our viewers. We see you coming on. Say good morning so we'll know where to shout you out from. Speaking of, I do, as we get ready to wrap up this last 8 minutes here, David Tepper has been much more calmer, much less involved, less of a pepper. I call him Tepper because, spicy or whatever. I want your opinion on this, Jack. So George Fant, who transitioned from college basketball into the NFL, sometimes you have these anomalies, these guys that can play both positions. Patrick Mahomes is another one. He played baseball, and then he came in, and now he's like a star quarterback. The Panthers yesterday signed this guy, Colin Granger, from Coastal Carolina. He's played in the Southern Miss Sun Belt Conference. I'm very familiar with that conference. That's actually same kind of conference that I come from my undergrad. He puts up a lot of points as a basketball player. 6'8", 245 pounds. Well, the Panthers yesterday have signed him as a tight end. He's never played football, period. I want to know what your thoughts are on that, because he was recruited by this offensive lineman, George Fant, who basically encouraged him because he's done the same thing.
Yeah, that's one position in football. You can maybe make the transition at tight end from one spot to another. Tony Gonzalez, pretty good college basketball player, great NFL, maybe arguably the greatest tight end to ever play, in the NFL. I mean, I wouldn't say he was, but outstanding, certainly one of the better ones. And it all depends on whether he has good hands or not, whether he can catch the football, because you got to be able to catch the football as a tight end. It's a lot more than just blocking, okay? Mm-hmm. And but there are the two sport athletes. Look, you left out Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray right now, probably could be playing shortstop for the Oakland Athletics had he chose to go in baseball. The great John Elway.
Yes.
Steinbrenner wanted him in the worst way to be a New York Yankee, and Elway spent 6 weeks at the Yankee minor league, complex in Oneonta, New York, and he played really well, and he was going to battle alongside Don Mattingly.
Let's not forget Bo Jackson.
Behind him. Bo Jackson,
Deion
Sanders.
Yeah, Michael Jordan tried for a little bit.
Well, Michael Jordan tried. We would have seen what would have developed. But Deion Sanders was a decent baseball player. Deion Sanders, he faced David Cohn, arguably a borderline Hall of Fame pitcher, arguably, and he went 8 for 16 against David Cohn. That's not a fluke. 8 for 16, and Deion was great on the bases. He hit 300 one year, actually. Okay, so guys can do that, but at certain positions in football, positions, you're not going to take a guy from another sport and make him a quarterback, or something like that. But tight end, I could see, look, LeBron James is too old now. LeBron James has always wanted to play football. But if LeBron James was 30 years old, he's a great enough athlete. And I think his hands would have been good enough.
His hands,
he could have played. I believe he could have played in the NFL. I didn't
even realize he had an interest in playing football. That's wild.
He did, but he's so great in basketball. But a part of LeBron James always wanted to play football. And tight end would have been his position.
I mean, if you're playing sports like that, you can pretty much forget a family life because you're gone the whole year.
But Sonja, let me just point out, if LeBron James was going to play football, that would be realistically the only position he could play tight end. You're not going to make him a wide receiver.
Yeah, definitely not.
You're not going to make him a running back.
Mm-mm.
I don't think, even though he could bull ahead, it's hard, learning the running.
He's so tall, too. Most running backs are a little more stout than that. And speaking of running backs, Jack, as we got like a couple of minutes left here, Christian McCaffrey, former Panther, now with the 49ers. He's been out, double ACL-like injuries this last season, out quite a bit. It came out yesterday. We're getting ready, come up on the draft here in another couple of weeks. And basically, the coaching staff is saying, he's healthy, but now they're looking to add to their draft a running back in the 2025 draft. Do we see that this may be time the 49ers may be moving on from McCaffrey, if not this season, probably the next season?
Yeah, to me, the 49ers should rebuild. That's just my feeling on it. What's the best year the Niners could have this year? Maybe get into playoffs, maybe be a wild card exit in the first game. I mean, a window, if it hasn't closed, it's certainly closing. Look, if they're that interested in a running back, whatever, they had an all-purpose play in Deebo Samuel, and they gave him up only for a 5th-round draft choice. I mean, that was basically nearly like giving him away.
Yeah, they were.
I don't know what the Niners are thinking. It's hard when you've been in the Super Bowl mix year after year to all of a sudden start rebuilding. They weren't in the mix last year, but did they look at last year as an off year? Or their window closing? You never know. Look at the Rams. After winning the Super Bowl, we thought their window was closing, yet they remain relevant. They would be in the playoffs and play competitively in their playoff losses, nearly winning games against the Lions and even against the Eagles last year. Eagles won the Super Bowl. We're thinking the Eagles, are they a powerhouse? Are they going to repeat? Well, the Rams nearly beat them last year in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So the Rams never rebuilt. They just rebooted and they stayed relevant. Maybe the Niners can do the same thing.
Yeah, I was actually shocked to see some of the moves that the Niners have made. I honestly thought that once McCaffrey got healthy and came back, they could possibly make a run for it. It's anybody's game, as you know, anybody's fold out there. The NFC West is going to be super competitive, kind of nose and nose. But this would be definitely a time that they would have to try to work on what they're going to do. Maybe they're just adding depth to their chart, and they're still negotiating Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy's contract. It still has not been solidified yet. So that's still up there. They've actually expressed that some teams have been interested in him, Jack. So we're going to have to keep our, eyes on the prize on this one and see how that one goes. Jack, great show as always. You can catch Jack and I on Friday. Of course, today is a big day of shows. Keith Angle has his show, Bo Crouch, Pags. I'll be on later on tonight. And of course, our midweek show will be on at 6 this afternoon. And we wish you guys a great day. Stay tuned on the Roku app for all shows here on National Streaming Sports.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball